I gave everything to my step-family that was never mine. Leaving them was the hardest, bravest thing I did. I never wanted to be a stepmother. That sounds harsh, but it's the truth. When I fell in love with Morris at 34, I thought I was getting a partner, not a package deal with two teenagers who already hated me before we met. Morris and I connected at a coffee shop downtown. He was reading a book about architecture while waiting for his order, and I couldn't help but notice the way his fingers traced the building sketches. When our eyes met, he smiled like he'd been waiting for someone to notice him all day. We talked for 3 hours straight about everything except the obvious: the wedding ring tan line on his finger and the exhaustion in my eyes from working double shifts at the hospital. He told me about the divorce 6 months later, how Lauren had taken the kids to her mother's house one Tuesday and never came back, how he'd spent 8 months in family court fighting for shared custody of Lily, 16, and Tyler, 14, how he worked construction during the day and drove Uber at night just to afford the lawyer fees and child support. I told him about my own wreckage, how I'd spent my 20s chasing a medical degree and my early 30s watching my long-term relationship crumble because David wanted kids and I wanted sleep, how I'd finally gotten used to my quiet apartment, my predictable schedule, my life that belonged entirely to me. We should have seen the red flags. Two broken people trying to build something new while carrying all their old baggage. But love makes you stupid, and loneliness makes you desperate. We moved in together after 8 months. I sold my apartment and moved into his 3-bedroom house with its lived-in furniture and family photos I tried not to stare at. The first time I met Lily and Tyler, they looked at me like I was a home invader. Lily had her mother's sharp chin and her father's stubborn jaw. She wore black everything and spoke in grunts. Tyler was smaller, quieter, but his eyes missed nothing. He watched me like he was collecting evidence for a trial I didn't know I was facing. "This is Kate," Morris said that first awkward Sunday dinner. "She's going to be around a lot." Lily looked up from her phone. "Cool. Can I go to Jess's house?" Tyler just stared at his mashed potatoes like they held the secrets of the universe. Morris squeezed my hand under the table. I squeezed back, telling myself it would get easier. Kids just needed time to adjust. That's what all the step-parenting books said. I'd bought 3 of them and highlighted them like I was studying for an exam. But time didn't help. If anything, it made things worse. Lily treated me like a temporary inconvenience. She'd walk into the kitchen while I was cooking, grab what she needed, and leave without a word. If I tried to make conversation, she'd answer in monosyllables while scrolling her phone. When I offered to drive her places, she'd say she'd rather walk. When I bought groceries she liked, she acted like it was an accident. Tyler was different. Tyler was strategic. He'd wait until Morris left for work, then test me. Leave dishes in the sink for days to see if I'd clean them. Forget to tell me about school events until the morning of. Ask me for permission to do things he knew required his father's approval, then act wounded when I said to ask his dad. The worst part was how they became angels whenever Morris was around. Suddenly, Lily would help with dinner. Tyler would share stories about his day. They'd curl up on the couch for family movie night, like we were the Brady Bunch. And Morris would look at me with these hopeful eyes, like, "See? They're warming up to you." But I felt like I was living in 2 different houses. One where I was part of the family, and one where I was the enemy. 3 months after I moved in, Lily had her first real blow-up. I'd bought her a sweater I thought she'd like, black, soft, expensive. I left it on her bed with a note that said, "Saw this and thought of you." When I got home from work, it was in a garbage bag by the front door. "You're not my mother," she screamed when I asked what I'd done wrong. "Stop trying to buy me with your stupid presents. I don't want your clothes. I don't want your food. I don't want you living in my house pretending to care about me." Morris tried to mediate, but Lily was past reason. "She doesn't belong here," she sobbed. "This is our family. She's just some stranger who moved in and thinks she can replace Mom." "I'm not trying to replace anyone," I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. "Then why are you here?" Lily shot back. I didn't have an answer that wouldn't hurt everyone in the room. That night, Morris held me while I cried into his chest. "She'll come around," he whispered. "She's just protecting herself." But I was starting to wonder if maybe Lily was right. Maybe I didn't belong there. Tyler's rebellion was quieter, but more devastating. He started forgetting to tell me when he needed rides to soccer practice. I'd find out when Morris got frantic phone calls about Tyler stranded at school. When I'd rush to pick him up, Tyler would get in the car silent and sullen, like my rescue was an inconvenience. He'd leave his retainer on the kitchen counter every morning, forcing me to chase him down before school. When I reminded him to brush his teeth, he'd say he'd already done it. Then Morris would find his toothbrush dry as bone. Small lies, constant lies, designed to make me look controlling or neglectful, depending on how I responded. The breaking point came during Tyler's parent-teacher conference. His grades were slipping, and Mrs. Raymond wanted to discuss his adjustment issues at home. Morris was working late, so I went alone. "Tyler's been having some trouble focusing," she said gently. "He mentioned there's been some changes at home recently." I felt my cheeks burn. "His father remarried," I said carefully. Mrs. Raymond nodded. "These transitions can be difficult. Tyler seems to be acting out his frustrations through his schoolwork. Has he talked to anyone about his feelings?" I realized I didn't know. Tyler barely talked to me about anything, let alone his feelings. I was living in the same house as this kid, supposedly helping to raise him, but I knew nothing about his inner world. That night, I tried to talk to Tyler about school. He was doing homework at the kitchen table, earbuds in, math book spread open. "Hey," I said, sitting across from him. "How's the algebra going?" He looked up, annoyed at the interruption. "Fine. Mrs. Raymond said you might need some extra help. I was good at math in school." I don't need help," he cut me off. "Dad can help me if I need it." I took a breath. "Tyler, I know this is all weird and new, but I'm not going anywhere, so maybe we could try to." "Why aren't you going anywhere?" he asked suddenly. "Mom left. Why won't you?" The question hit me like a slap. "Because I love your father. And I care about you and Lily." Tyler stared at me for a long moment. "You don't even know us." He was right, and we both knew it. Morris tried to help, but he was caught between loyalty to his kids and love for me. He'd have serious talks with Lily about respect, then she'd be polite for exactly one day before going back to treating me like furniture. He'd explain to Tyler that I was part of the family now, but Tyler would just nod and continue his campaign of passive resistance. The worst fights happened after the kids went to their mother's house every other weekend. Morris would want to talk about progress and adjustment, while I'd want to process the emotional exhaustion of being rejected and tested for 2 weeks straight. "They're good kids," Morris would say. "They're just protecting themselves." "I know they're good kids," I'd snap back. "But I'm drowning here. I feel like I'm fighting for my place in this house every single day. What do you want me to do? Choose between you and my children?" The question hung in the air like smoke. We both knew that if it came down to that choice, I'd lose. And maybe I should. 6 months in, I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Walsh specialized in blended families, and she had the tired eyes of someone who'd heard every version of this story. "You're grieving," she told me during our second session. "You're grieving the relationship you thought you'd have with Morris, the family you thought you were joining, the life you thought you were building." I laughed bitterly. "I'm grieving a fantasy? Most step-parents do," she said matter-of-factly. "The reality is much harder than anyone prepares you for." She was right. I'd imagined cozy family dinners and homework help and inside jokes. I'd pictured myself as the cool stepmom who bridged the gap between the kids and their father. Instead, I felt like an unwanted houseguest who'd overstayed her welcome. Dr. Walsh taught me about boundaries, about letting Morris handle discipline, about not taking the kids' rejection personally. But knowing something intellectually and living it emotionally are different things. The crisis came during Lily's junior year. She'd been acting out more than usual, staying out past curfew, failing chemistry, getting caught with alcohol at a friend's house. Morris was at his wit's end, working more hours to pay for family therapy while Lily refused to go. One Tuesday night, Lily came home 2 hours late, reeking of marijuana and defiance. Morris was at a work dinner, so I was alone when she stumbled through the front door. "You're late," I said from the couch. Lily kicked off her shoes and headed for the stairs. So, your curfew was 10. It's midnight." She turned around, eyes blazing. "You're not my mom. You don't get to give me a curfew." Something in me snapped. Maybe it was the months of walking on eggshells, or the constant feeling that I was fighting a battle I couldn't win. Whatever it was, I stood up. "You're right," I said, voice steady. "I'm not your mom. But I live here, I pay bills here, and I'm not going to stand by while you treat this house like a hotel." Lily laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What are you going to do? Ground me? I'm going to call your father and tell him you came home high." "Go ahead," she sneered. "He'll pick me over you anyway." The words hung between us like a challenge. We both knew she was probably right. But I called Morris anyway. He came home 45 minutes later to find Lily locked in her room and me sitting at the kitchen table, hands shaking around a cup of cold coffee. The fight that followed was legendary. Lily screaming about boundaries and respect. Morris trying to mediate while dealing with his own anger about the drugs. Me sitting silent, realizing that this was what rock bottom felt like. She has no authority over me. Lily yelled. She's just some woman you're screwing who moved into our house. Lily! Morris's voice was sharp with shock. What? It's true. She doesn't care about us. She cares about you and we're just baggage she has to deal with. I stood up quietly and walked to our bedroom. I could hear them arguing for another hour before the house finally went quiet. That night, Morris found me packing a suitcase. Kate, don't, he said, voice exhausted. She's just a kid. She's acting out. She's right, though, I said, folding my scrubs with mechanical precision. I am just some woman who moved into your house. I'm not their family. I'm just the person their family has to tolerate. Morris sat heavily on the bed. That's not true. When's the last time Lily asked me for advice? When's the last time Tyler told me about his day without being prompted? When's the last time any of us felt like a real family instead of three strangers trying not to step on each other's toes? He didn't have an answer. I didn't leave that night. Or the next. But something had shifted. I stopped trying so hard. Stopped buying Lily little gifts she'd reject. Stopped offering Tyler help he didn't want. Stopped pretending that love and persistence were enough to fix what was fundamentally broken. Dr. Walsh called it disengaging. Morris called it giving up. I called it survival. The house got quieter. Lily and Tyler still lived their lives, but I stepped back from trying to be part of them. I worked longer shifts at the hospital. I started visiting my sister more often. I began building a life that didn't depend on winning over two teenagers who'd already decided I wasn't worth knowing. Morris noticed, of course. You're pulling away, he said one night as we lay in bed, careful not to touch. I'm protecting myself, I replied. From my children? From failing at something that was impossible from the start. We went to couples therapy. Dr. Gary had kind eyes and a wall full of certificates that made her look like she knew what she was doing. But even she couldn't fix the fundamental problem. Morris needed me to love his children, and his children needed me to disappear. What do you need from Kate? Dr. Gary asked Lily during one of our family sessions. Lily crossed her arms and stared at the floor. Nothing. What would make this situation better for you? Lily looked up then, eyes hard as stones. For things to go back to how they were before. Dr. Gary nodded patiently. That's not going to happen. Kate is part of your father's life now. What would make it easier to live together? Lily shrugged. I don't know. For her to stop trying to be my mom, I guess. I felt Morris tense beside me. Kate isn't trying to replace your mother, he said. Lily's laugh was bitter. Then what is she trying to do? It was a fair question. What was I trying to do? Tyler was more diplomatic, but equally honest. I just want her to leave us alone, he said quietly. Not in a mean way. Just, we were fine before. Dad was fine. We didn't need anyone else. Dr. Gary turned to me. How does it feel to hear that, Kate? I looked at these two kids who'd been forced to accept me as part of their lives, and I felt the last of my fantasy family crumble. It feels honest, I said. And sad, but honest. That night, Morris and I sat in our living room like strangers in a waiting area. I don't know how to fix this, he said finally. Maybe you can't, I replied. Maybe some things are just broken. He looked up sharply. Are you talking about us or the family situation? I realized I wasn't sure there was a difference. A year and a half after I moved in, Lily graduated high school. The ceremony was awkward, me sitting 3 seats down from Lauren, Morris's ex-wife, pretending we were all one big happy family for the cameras. Lily hugged her father, her mother, her grandparents, her friends. She nodded politely at me and said thank you when I congratulated her. That night, at the family dinner Morris insisted on hosting, Lily announced she was moving in with her mother for the summer before college. It's just easier, she said, not meeting my eyes. Mom lives closer to my job. Morris looked crushed, but I felt nothing but relief. One less person I was failing to connect with. Tyler would be a senior in the fall. One more year of tiptoeing around each other. One more year of being polite strangers sharing the same address. That's when I started planning my exit. I didn't tell Morris at first. I just started looking at apartments, calculating how much money I'd need to get back on my feet. I looked at my life and realized I'd spent 2 years trying to fit into a space that wasn't meant for me. The final straw came during Tyler's homecoming weekend. He'd made the varsity soccer team, and Morris was so proud he could barely contain himself. The whole family came to watch. Lily drove down from college. Lauren and her new boyfriend showed up with matching team shirts. Even the grandparents came. I sat in the bleachers watching this kid I'd lived with for 2 years, cheering for his goals, feeling genuinely proud of his accomplishments. When the game ended, Tyler ran to the stands. He hugged his father, his mother, his sister. He high-fived his grandparents and thanked his mom's boyfriend for coming. He walked right past me. Not out of malice, I realized. I just wasn't part of his celebration. After 2 years of shared dinners and homework battles and daily life, I was still background noise in his story. That night, I told Morris I was moving out. "You're leaving because Tyler didn't hug you at a soccer game?" he asked, incredulous. "I'm leaving because after 2 years, I'm still not part of this family. And trying to force it is hurting everyone." Morris sat heavily on the couch. "I love you. I know. I love you too. But love isn't enough to fix this." We talked until sunrise. About his guilt over his failed marriage. About his kids' need for stability. About my loneliness and feeling of failure. About how we'd both tried to build something beautiful on a foundation that was never solid. "What if we tried counseling again?" he asked desperately. "What if we gave it more time?" "Time isn't the problem, Morris. The problem is that your children need you to choose them, and I need you to choose me, and there's no world where both of those things can happen." I moved out 3 weeks later. Tyler helped me load boxes into my car with the same polite efficiency he'd shown me for 2 years. No emotion, no drama, just a job to be completed. Lily came home from college to see me off. "I'm sorry," she said as I packed the last of my things. "I know I wasn't very nice to you." I looked at this young woman who'd fought so hard to protect her family from me. "You were protecting something you loved," I said. "I understand that." She hugged me then, briefly, and it was the most genuine moment we'd shared in 2 years. Morris cried when I left. I held him in the driveway like we were saying goodbye at an airport, both of us knowing this was really over. "I wanted this to work so badly," he whispered. "I know," I said. "So did I." 6 months later, I'm living in a small apartment downtown. I work my shifts at the hospital. I see Dr. Walsh once a week. I'm learning to be alone without being lonely. Sometimes I miss the chaos of family life. Sometimes I miss Morris's laugh, and the way Tyler concentrated on his homework, and even Lily's dramatic sighs. But mostly I feel light. I don't wake up every morning bracing myself for rejection. I don't spend my evenings analyzing every interaction for signs of progress. I don't lie awake wondering if I'm doing enough, being enough, trying enough. Morris and I text occasionally. Tyler made honor roll. Lily changed her major to psychology. They're both doing well, thriving even. Without me, they're complicating their family dynamic. I don't regret trying. Someone had to love Morris enough to fight for a place in his complicated life. Someone had to show those kids that adults can care about them without trying to replace their mother. Even if that someone couldn't make it work, maybe it mattered that I tried. Last week, I ran into Lauren at the grocery store. We'd only met a handful of times during my relationship with Morris, but she recognized me immediately. "Kate," she said, her voice careful. "How are you?" "I'm good," I said, and meant it. "How are the kids?" "They're good. Growing up too fast." She paused, studying my face. "Morris told me about the breakup." "I'm sorry." I shrugged. "Sometimes things don't work out." She nodded, then surprised me. "For what it's worth, you tried harder than most people would have. The kids, they knew you cared about them, even when they couldn't show it. It was a small kindness, but it hit me harder than I expected." "Thank you," I said. That night, I called Dr. Walsh and told her about the encounter. "How did it make you feel?" she asked. "Like maybe I didn't fail completely," I said. "Like maybe caring was enough, even if it wasn't sustainable." "What did you learn from all this?" I thought for a moment. That you can't love people into loving you back. That some families are closed circles, and that's not anyone's fault. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from something that isn't working. "And what do you want now?" I looked around my small apartment with its carefully chosen furniture and its peaceful quiet. "I want to build something that fits me," I said. "Not try to squeeze myself into something that doesn't." Dr. Walsh smiled. "That sounds like a good plan. These days, I don't think about Morris and the kids much. When I do, it's with a kind of wistful gratitude. They taught me things I needed to learn about boundaries and self-respect, and the difference between giving up and letting go. I'm dating someone new now, James, a divorced father of one who lives 3 hours away. His daughter is 8, and she thinks I'm funny. We take things slow, build trust carefully. I don't try to be her mother. I just try to be myself, and let the relationship grow naturally. It's different this time. Easier. Maybe because I'm different, less desperate to prove I belong, more willing to let people show me who they are instead of who I need them to be. Sometimes people ask if I regret those 2 years with Morris and his family. The honest answer is no. I regret the pain we all went through, but I don't regret trying to love them. Even if that love couldn't fix what was broken, even if it couldn't bridge gaps that were maybe too wide to cross, it was real and it mattered. You don't need everyone to love you back. You don't need every family to have room for you. You just need to know when you've given all you can give, when staying is hurting more than helping, when walking away is actually the most loving thing you can do. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you learn that your worth isn't measured by how well you fit into someone else's life. It's measured by how honestly you live your own.